Good evening. It's Monday, October 22nd, 7 o'clock. Athens City Council is meeting a series of committee meetings. We'll have Environmental Committee first, Finance and Personnel, City Services, and Arts and Recreation. The first one is Environment Committee. We're going to have a presentation by Mike Cooper, who's acting as our wellhead protection specialist. Mike? And you should have handouts for each of you to follow along if you need.
Nice to talk to you all again. I just wanted to update you on what we've been up to in the Wellhead Protection Program since we started in February of 2007. And as far as our educational outreach activities are concerned, we did a training seminar for businesses that are located in the Wellhead Protection Area back in June. This was done in conjunction with the Athens Area Chamber of Commerce and the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency. We thought it went quite well. We had good attendance. We got to show off the groundwater model, which I'll talk about again here in a second. And we hope to develop a similar program that we can bring to the general public and do for people who are residents of the wellhead protection area, some of the strategies and things they can do to help protect the water supply. The wellhead team also participated in the annual Waterfest event at the Athens High School Land Lab back in May. This program is to promote environmental awareness among third graders in Athens County. It's a countywide program. We had a great time with the kids. That's where we got to really break out the groundwater model and have some fun with it, as Carol can attest. Get red and pink dye all over us and show people how pollution travels through the groundwater. It's quite enlightening and a good thing for everybody to see. It really opens your eyes to what goes on underneath the ground. That was done in conjunction with the Athens High School biology classes, the Athens Soil and Water Conservation District, the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, and the Wellhead Protection Team. Also did put a display together for the county fair this year. We had maps of the wellhead protection area, information about the wellhead protection area and the ordinance, and some educational material as well for people on drinking water conservation and protection. We do have a PowerPoint presentation that we've developed. What this is basically it's just a line-by-line discussion of the ordinance to give people an awareness of what the ordinance is, what the content of it is, and explain some of the finer points of it. We can take that show on the road. We'd be happy to take it to neighborhood associations, schools, business meetings, anything, anytime anyone would like to listen to. We have two versions, a shorter one, it's about 10 minutes, and a longer one, it probably takes about a half hour, goes into a little more detail. And I also completed a course through the Environmental Protection Agency to get certification as a Class A water system operator. Class A systems are small water systems, not nearly the scale of a municipal water system, but it gave me a good background into how a system is put together, how water is treated and distributed. And it certainly was a worthwhile endeavor, and I hope it is also useful to the program. On the second and third pages of your report, you'll see some of the incident investigations that we've conducted in the last 7 or 8 months. I won't go into any of them in specific unless you have specific questions about them. Just to give you an overview of how we look at potential violations in the wellhead protection area. And also included is a list of the potential contaminant source inventory updates that we're currently working on. I think we're probably 60–70% through the list now. We hope to have them all wrapped up by the 1-year anniversary of the program in February. Of particular note, we have just received plans for an expansion and remodel of the Ohio Department of Transportation facility on West Union Street. We look forward to doing a review of that, making recommendations to the Service Safety Director and Council as well. We think that we will have a reduction in potential contaminant sources in the wellhead protection area through this remodel, so we try to be as supportive as possible there. And we also have completed review of all the facilities that were required to submit spill prevention, control, and containment plans with the program when it started back in '03. Most were in compliance with the regulations. A few needed a little tweaking here and there. Notices were sent out, and just about everybody has responded. So all of that information is now up to date. And then the last 2 pages, of course, one is just the structure of the wellhead protection team as it is now. Ray Hazlett being the top dog there. Program administrator is Nick Carr at the Division of Water and Sewer. The technical director, Crystal Kennard from the water treatment plant. And then the support staff, myself as enforcement officer. We have a groundwater specialist, Chris Coble from Egan and Associates. Our education specialist, Gail Doyle, has moved on to another career, and she will be replaced at Athens Soil and Water Conservation. I'm afraid I don't have that information this evening. Okay. And then our clerical help, Kelly Clemens at the Division of Water and Sewer, and Donna Gruser at our office. And the last sheet is my contact information. Voicemail is accessible 24/7. If anybody has concerns any time of day, please leave me a voicemail. I check it frequently. Same with my email address. You can access that around the clock. And my cell phone works most of the time as long as I remember to charge it. You can usually find me with that. At this point, I'll field any questions you all might have.
Questions? Virginia?
Yeah, I think that's really valuable, the education aspect and everything. And I was wondering, you said that your seminar for businesses was well attended. I was thinking, were there representatives from pretty much every business in the wellhead protection area?
It was a pretty broad spectrum of folks who showed up. I think there were a few more that could have been there, but overall we were pleased and think we got the message out.
Okay. Are you planning maybe to do another?
Sure.
To include so that others might attend?
Absolutely.
Also?
I wouldn't object to doing that on an annual basis because we do figure that this will be a dynamic program. We think we are working on some suggestions for the committee, things that we can tweak in the ordinance. And we will be bringing that to you in a later report.
Good.
Okay.
Jim?
Jim?
I noticed that in your activity list, almost everything was either you received a complaint or you received concerns about potential problems, which I assume were from passers-by or neighbors or
Sure,
something.
it comes from a wide range of sources.
Yeah, are you getting things like building permits forwarded to you, et cetera, so you know about planned activities?
Not at this time, although, let me back up a second on that. We have received plans for development. The Ohio Department of Transportation is a good one. There was a new facility going in on Columbus Road, an auto parts store. We did receive plans to review on that. And it is a requirement of the ordinance that anybody wishing to locate in the wellhead protection area needs to submit plans to us for review before they stick a shovel in the ground. So we do keep an eye on the area, and we will give all plans a good solid review. They will be reviewed on a team basis, and then recommendations to you all as to how you want to handle it.
Okay, thank you.
Debbie?
I have 2 questions. First, I want to thank you for coming to, report to us
My pleasure.
and give us an update. I don't have the ordinance in front of me, but I believe that there's an area in there that talks about unannounced inspections
Yes,
on these issues. Are you doing those?
Yeah, we decided, and we made a point of this in our presentation for the business seminar, that routine inspections, we will give 24 hours notice before we come to see your facility. If we receive complaints, we get a real concern, we're just going to show up in response to a complaint or an emergency situation. But in general, we want the inspection process to be friendly. We're interested in what you're doing with your business, and we want to talk to you about the processes that you use, the procedures that you follow. So with the routine inspections, it's a learning experience for all of us, and we want to make sure there's fair notice with that.
Okay. And then everything that I see in the list of incident investigations looks like it's resolved, but I'm not sure about the notice of violation from April 2007 for University Estates. It says that they were granted 60 days to bring the facility into compliance, but I don't see something later on that says whether that happened or not.
They have addressed all the issues from that particular incident, and we consider them at the present time to be in compliance with the wellhead protection ordinance.
Great, thanks.
Carol?
Just wanted to comment that it's great to see all of this in action. The education element's great. We're going to miss Gail, but I'm sure they'll get someone equally as peppy and upbeat as she to replace her. And also the enforcement that's going on. And I told Mike right before the meeting that I have had comments from folks saying what a joy he is to work with, even when they're in trouble, that things get resolved in a very civil way, and it's a very comfortable working situation, so thanks.
My pleasure.
Any other questions right now? I have basically two questions. One, I noticed that you have on your team a fellow from Egon. Is he on retainer for us? Is that part of the billing system right now?
You want to comment on that one?
He would charge based on the type of consultation involved, how involved it would be.
Okay.
You know, if it's something pretty minor, believe it or not, they don't charge us.
Okay. And the other question, I was concerned about the railway, and you have contacts with them, I assume?
Yes, we have established contact with Norfolk and Southern Railway. They have submitted a spill control, containment, and prevention plan. That is their corporate policy. We do have a list of chemicals that are generally hauled through the area. There is a procedure we have to follow if we want specific information on a specific load that's coming through. They don't regularly publish that for security reasons, obviously. So we have a contact person for that, and I would personally like to thank Mr. Bob Raber from Norfolk and Southern Railway, who's helped, has waded through several levels of bureaucracy for us and got us the information that we were looking for. One area of concern that's been expressed to us is the application of herbicides along the right-of-way for the railroad. And we did make a request to Norfolk and Southern to suspend spraying as they come through the Armitage well field. They will try to be as accommodating as they can. One point they wanted to stress with us is that they're concerned about the integrity of the right-of-way. Their herbicide applications are very targeted. We have MSDS sheets on file for all the material that they use. And we are working with the Bike Path Committee and the Street Department. We are going to post some signs along the right-of-way where we can, visible from the railroad, asking them not to spray, and giving information on how to report spills and contact information. So we hope to be pursuing that here in the next few weeks and get those signs posted.
Okay. And one more question. It sounds like in terms of building, you're mostly looking at the commercial level building.
Right.
Okay. Rather than residential. So should you be concerned with residential? Should you be
Well,
talking to Steve? Or?
I think probably the biggest concern I have with residential development would be the installation of septic systems in areas. Now, most areas of the wellhead protection area are served by public sewer. But, the Armitage area, the sewer system doesn't reach everything there. We do have some septic systems in the area. We've had no complaints about failures. But we do want to be careful about what we permit in that area. The county health department has authority for the regulation of private sewage treatment systems. And our regulations are specifically designed to prevent contamination of groundwater. So we will be looking at those very carefully.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mike, for coming.
Thanks.
You're off the hook now. Thanks a lot. The next, there's several miscellaneouses I'd like to cover. One is you received some paperwork for a ARC, Appalachian Regional Commission grant. We're going to try putting together, this is for LED lights for the traffic signalization. I got it just today, and it's coming from Andy Stone, who's in pursuit of monies. If you look at the piece of paper I gave you there, there's a highlight section at the bottom in terms of how much we may have to do for a match, would be about $15,000 in the next 12 months. Again, this is to upgrade all our LED, to work towards upgrading all our traffic signals. We still have a few that are still the regular style of incandescent, Mr. Edison's work. This has to be in by, the deadline for this is November 5th, so I'd like to put this on the agenda and suspend rules next time, if that's okay. Any questions? I just gave you the one pager. There's a series of emails back and forth, all dated today from Andy to Debbie, and I suspect from Ray as well. Comments? Okay. So if that could be put up for them? Okay. The last one is, you'll have a copy. I was going to put it in Nancy's City Services, but Carol pointed out could fall right in Environment well, is a copy of last year's ordinance, the 013006. This is where we suspended the 24-hour parking rules during winter break. I did not get any complaints about it. I would like to reintroduce that. I'm not even sure when school stops at this point. But we'd probably augment that, change it to reflect this time.
It's like the 5th of December, right in there.
5th of December? Okay. How do you feel about that? I know some of you were not...
Thanksgiving is early.
Thanksgiving is early?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we put this forward, we might need to suspend on this as well. Or maybe at second reading.
So
Questions? Go ahead. What?
people can park then for a couple of weeks during
Yes.
winter break
Yes.
on the streets.
Yes. We did this last year.
Right, I know.
Without too much problem.
I was just articulating it so people would understand.
Debbie?
I just have a question for the administration. Did we encounter any problems in terms of being able to do snow removal? I can't remember when we had snow last winter, or if this was any kind of an issue that you're aware of.
It never snowed.
Didn't snow enough to make it an issue.
Okay.
Were there any other issues, Rick?
No, it was mostly, I've got an extra officer that I've got to figure out what to do with and what assignments to give them.
Oh,
Because they're not doing what they normally do, so.
Okay.
But it's good because if people want time off, I've got a replacement, so.
There's a possibility right there.
And I didn't really analyze any impact on revenue. I mean, I'm sure there's some.
Okay. Okay, so that, Jim, what?
The only complaint that I heard was that because we did this, some residents
Gotta have it.
have trouble keeping track of when the parking rules are suspended and when they're not. I had a resident on Grosvenor talk to me because she had assumed that it was relaxed during spring break. And so she parked on her street in front of her house and got a ticket.
oh,
But it is just during
Winter
winter
break.
and summer.
Actually, we didn't do it summer last time.
We didn't even do it
No,
during summer?
didn't do it summer.
Okay.
So right now, it's the only time we're running it is winter break.
well, I was going to
Go
say,
ahead.
I mean, obviously it'll be on the website, right?
Yes.
If people remember to check.
But not everybody surfs the web.
I know.
Okay. Carol?
The one comment I had last year, came, when we passed it, very concerned, and when we were talking about it, and I said, well, let's talk about it after Christmas and see how it went. Talked to her again, and she said it went fine.
Okay. And again, this...
And that was on a heavily impacted street.
And again, nominally, this is actually a Transportation Committee matter. So, Amy, do you want to, I put environment because we don't have a Transportation Committee, but do you want to add anything to this?
I think that, just echoing what Jim said, I think that in terms of when we do, I like that we, sort of rescind the 24-hour parking rule during these times because it makes it more convenient for people. But I think that at times it can be confusing, so as long as we're communicating that effectively, I think it's, a good idea.
Okay. So this will be on the agenda as well. I also received some information about noxious weeds. Is that for you, Nancy, or is that from my,
You can do it now.
you want to,
Okay.
oh, you,
Handouts.
handouts? Is Steve
Okay.
involved in this?
I don't think so. I mean, I think he's involved in it, but I didn't ask him specifically.
This is, again, under miscellaneous and
I
environment.
have more.
I received from
Let me give these
Ray
to those
Hazlett
three.
a list of
Here.
noxious weeds from the University of Montana, a list of wild mustard, musk thistle, oxeye
Staple on the
daisies,
back.
Canadian thistle, Canada thistle, poison hemlock, wild carrot, purple loosestrife, which is not here yet, thank God, wild parsnip, multiflora rose, Russian thistle, shadow cane, and Johnson grass. This, of course, is a tentative list of what noxious weeds may or may not be.
I still need another one.
I know we want, Okay. I know Steve, did you want to address any of this?
I didn't.
Did you come for the noxious weeds?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
You want to cover it? Were you prepared? I mean, if you were waiting for Nancy's committee, we can hold on.
Oh, I didn't put it on my agenda.
Okay.
I'm not sure when the appropriate time is to speak, or what the questions may be. I just knew from the last council meeting that I was asked to attend, and I think a tree commissioner was asked to attend tonight also.
Yeah, we didn't.
Okay.
So I put, so just to chime in on Paul's committee, 91002, which we passed a while ago, says that the code officer was doing exactly what it says he should do on this. And so it says, any growth of such noxious weeds, grass, or other vegetation other than trees or shrubs over such height, which would be 8 inches, or reaching maturity is thereby declared a nuisance. So we passed this, and we could modify it to allow tomato plants and other things like that to be grown in front yards. So,
Okay. And I want to chime in and say that we received a letter from Rose Deacus dated October 16th, expressing that, she, I probably should read it in. After talking to Athens Code Officer Bob Mullins today, I now understand that sunflower garden can remain in our front yard till killing frost. I'd like to add that Mr. Mullins has always been courteous and helpful during all of our face-to-face conversations in the past month. Prior to sending the code violation letter, Ron Zulli and Bob Mullins came over to our house and explained what was needed to be done, be corrected in our property. There were several code violations which we immediately corrected. I did not understand that the garden was deemed okay. What we need from council is a code clarification regarding front yard gardens in order to continue it in our future years. Thank you for considering this issue. And again, that's signed by Rose Deacus of 37 Brown. So, do you want to add anything, or?
Well, to kind of piggyback on what you just mentioned, you said you received some information from Mr. Hazlett. I also went out and went to the Ohio State University Extension Service. And they have a publication that's called Bulletin 866-98, Identify Noxious Weeds of Ohio. They list 14 noxious weeds at the OSU website, so those are a few more than were on that other list. Noxious weeds possess one or more of the following attributes: aggressive competition with cultivated plants, toxicity to livestock, natural habitat degradation, and a threat to public health, safety, or navigation, according to OSU Extension Service. So, for example, even though it's not listed on as a noxious weed in Ohio, we do sometimes have to address pokeweed. I don't know if any of you are familiar with pokeweed. It's a very large, purplish-looking plant. Big berries on it, very toxic. So even though that is not identified as a noxious weed, it is one, though, that may pose a threat to public health. But again, it's not on the list, so if giant pokeweed is fine, that's all right. Some people really like it. Some people actually even eat it. You can eat it at certain times of the year if you take precaution. It's like
Young
natural
shoots.
spinach.
Yeah.
But in general, it's a very poisonous plant.
So what you're saying then, Steve, is that if we define noxious using the USDA website, we will not include things that you need to have the discretion to cut down, is that right? Or to have cut down?
That is a possibility, because if you, excuse me, if you look at the definition of litter, which is 91001, the section just previous to the one that you had mentioned, it says that litter includes any garbage, waste, peelings of vegetables or fruit, rubbish, ashes, cans, bottles, wire, paper, cartons, boxes, parts of automobiles, wagons, furniture, glass, oil, of an unsightly or unsanitary nature, or anything else of an unsightly or unsanitary nature, which is very broad. Very broad.
Bad ties.
So sometimes we do, we do interpret very broadly on these things, especially when we receive a complaint. And a lot of the investigations that we do are based on complaint. Just maybe something, curiosity, if you look at section 91003, which is the one just after the one that you'd mentioned, it also says that determining that any weeds on a land are approaching such growth is indicated in section 91002. And then it says, so as to become injurious or harmful to the inhabitants of the city, notice shall be given according to section 73151 and 73252 of the Ohio Revised Code. Some people have even proffered the idea to me that so long as they're not injurious or harmful to other inhabitants other than myself on my own property, they're not a nuisance. So that's another interpretation that you might take out of section 03. Normally, we don't do that. Again, especially on complaint.
Steve, now I noticed a couple months ago you went to the tree commission asking about bamboo, and I think their call out that bamboo was not a grass and therefore not a weed, even though it is invasive. There have been issues of bamboo in various parts of the city.
Right. I'd received a complaint in my office of several properties in town that had invasive growths of bamboo. I took that question to the tree commission, and even though bamboo is defined as a grass, their impression was that it was not a grass in accordance with 9102. But they did express the idea that some running types, root running types of bamboo were invasive, and perhaps they might be cited to be an invasive species as opposed to a noxious weed. So again, even the tree commission really, was trying to get some direction from them and how to respond to the complainant who had said that he saw that bamboo was defined as grass and there were growths of bamboo in town over 8 inches in height.
Okay, it doesn't sound like we're going to reach a conclusion on this immediately, since frost is going to come, unless anybody else want to chime in here?
Well, could we ask Steve again about a natural quote-quote prairie front yard? How does, that would be permitted, or it has been permitted, right? In Oakmont? Or did that how was that resolved?
In Oakmont 3, the first 2 lots on the right were purchased by the adjacent property owner and had some pine trees planted up front, and they've left the rear area in a natural condition. My office has not written that up under grass and weed violation or notice of violation, nor have we received any complaints. Normally, we're not going through people's backyards to see,
There's
the
no
grass being
structure.
cut or something like that. We're normally just doing front yards.
Yeah, if you look at the magazines, there's much promotion now of front yard gardens and even vegetables in the front yard.
Right. We have several properties in town. There's one on 2nd Street and one on North Lancaster with very attractive front yard gardens, and I'm sure there are more all over town. In an urban environment, especially here, your backyard may be in a lot of shade, not get much sun, and so the front yard is a good place to do that. It also cuts down on your carbon emissions if you don't have to cut grass. Lawnmowers being one of the most inefficient internal combustion engines that there are. So there are several things that are an advantage to gardening anywhere. Some of my produce from my house has ended up in salads in local businesses here. I'd like to garden myself. My son wants to plant some bamboo, but I've told him we're not going to do that.
I've got some, I'll give you.
Okay, so it sounds like you have a lot of discretion how you enforce this.
Right, and a lot of times, too, this is, just if I might, in association with some other sections of the code, in particular the housing code, 291201 sanitary requirements. And that section of the code says every exterior property area of a premise shall be maintained in a clean, safe, and sanitary condition, free of any accumulation of rubbish or garbage. No owner or operator shall maintain or permit to be maintained at or on an exterior property area a premise in a condition that deteriorates or debases the appearance of the neighborhood, adversely alters the appearance and general character of the neighborhood, creates a fire safety or health hazard, or creates a public nuisance. And then it goes to list dilapidated fences, discarded furniture, a lot of other things. So more often than not, when we're addressing something that has to do with tall grass or weeds, we're also addressing some of these other things too,
Okay.
which has been the case in most situations of recent note.
Okay. Wojciech?
Yeah, this seems pretty broad in grass. If grass is more than 8 inches, then people can be cited, right?
That's correct.
And this discussion of kind of natural landscapes, which are good for water conservation, et cetera. I'm wondering if we want to revise this a little bit, because the letter of the law says, according to this, it's grass or any growth, grass or other vegetation. So I wonder if we want to say, something except in natural, water conservation settings, because, if we have this on the books and then we're kind of making a lot of decisions about what's okay, it just seems like it ought to be part of the code.
Another discussion that I've had related to that with the Tree Commission has to do with what I think are called woodland prairies. Some neighbors read the ordinance and say, to me, it looks like grass and it's taller than 8 inches and needs to be cut. Other people think that it's just a renaturalization of
Yeah.
areas. I have a large area in my own backyard that I'm letting go back to woodland.
Right.
And so there are some weeds and things growing while it does that. And it's really hard to sort it out. How do you cut the grass and the weeds,
Yeah.
and still leave the species that you want to retain there? So it makes it a little difficult.
At this point, I'd hesitate to start changing this unless we could get, I don't see there's a real consensus in many cases of what noxious weeds are. I would probably put poison ivy in this, and it's not part of that. It's, it could be considered invasive, but it's also a natural or native.
There was some on Sunnyside that was in the front hedges, I remember one.
There's some on Schaefer that's just eye level, so I'm
And you go
aware of
by and
these
it's
things.
like,
Yes.
Well, Steve, do you have any ideas on how, it seems like you've dealt with most of these issues fairly reasonably. So in the near term, if you come up with something that, I think Wojciech is right, though, you're maybe out there sometimes, especially if people get into neighborhood quarrels. So the kind of natural, let's say, landscape is, if you think we need to start moving, maybe you could tell us what language you would see.
I can get back to you. I know my code officer is very interested in what the standard is for application, and we hope that's consistent throughout the city. I don't want to do one thing in one neighborhood that I don't do in another neighborhood.
Right.
Okay.
Those standards may be different from area to area in town, but I think for consistency's sake, we ought to do the same thing all over town. Some of these things like oxeye daisy and Queen Anne's lace, I didn't ever think that those were noxious weeds. I've got them growing at my house. I kind of like looking at them,
I
but
like them.
now I know that they're invasive noxious weeds.
Chicory.
Well, let's put poison
Debbie?
ivy on.
I have kind of a related question. When this question came up, I looked at the zoning code to see what it says about gardening, and I've been a little puzzled by the wording of this. What's your interpretation of gardening in an R1? Because it looks to me from the code like it's conditionally permitted.
That's my understanding, yes, and I had someone gardening on, what's the name, on Curtis Street, who had to come to the Board of Zoning Appeals. It has to do, though, with if you sell your produce.
So for your kitchen garden, for your own
No,
use,
no.
it just doesn't speak to that at all?
No, it's just if you're going to, sell off-site. You can grow on-site so long as you don't sell, but if you intend to sell, then you need a conditional use permit. And I have had one situation like that up on Curtis Street. But I think it's, everyone's seen, I mean, I just saw it recently in the news, that front yard gardening is becoming very popular. So to draw that distinction that for your own consumption, that's a permitted use, an accessory use related to the principal use of the property. And that's generally how I look at it. I mean, what would be more common than growing a garden to be an accessory use to your residence? Hopefully we can encourage those kinds of things.
Okay, I think, well, go ahead,
I
Superintendent.
was going to say, that some of those things covered, though, in covenants of various subdivisions.
That could be
And
too.
I couldn't grow corn, maybe, in my front yard.
That could be,
Unless I could.
there may be some subdivisions that have deed restrictions and covenants that
Right.
would prohibit such things.
Right.
We investigated one property a while back that they were growing a garden and they were growing corn in the border between the sidewalk and the curb. And we actually cited them for litter and rubbish. Beer cans were around. And so creatively, what they did was they got a piece of chicken wire, put 2 stakes in the ground,
I know the place
and
you're
hung
talking about.
cans up that blow in the wind to scare the birds away.
Oh, dear.
And I told my officers to just leave it alone.
Corn's a grass, too.
You know why? Because the fence made a difference? The beer cans, why leave it alone?
No, I thought it was just an appropriate method to protect the corn that they were growing right there from animals. Could have just easily been Coke cans or
Right.
Pepsi cans or 7-Up
Right,
cans.
but growing the corn was not the
No, no,
issue.
no.
Okay.
Okay.
It was the
Jim?
cans.
I agree that we need to look at this because what jumps out at me is that other vegetation is in there. It says
Yes,
noxious
sir.
weeds or other vegetation, so that's, as Steve says, extremely broad. I was just going to make a suggestion. I know the Extension Office has a program called Master Gardeners, and I'm sure that the Extension Office might have access to some model codes out there, or National Wildlife Federation has long been a big proponent of natural yardscapes and have actually, I believe, sent some of their lawyers to defend some people. So again, that website might offer us some ideas on how to make our code reflect this change in outlook.
Okay. I suspect this will be something to bring up in the spring.
But no, we should do it, I'm sorry.
I know.
We should do it in the winter so it'll be
Yes.
ready for the spring.
Right.
So when it gets it ready, let's have it.
Part of the, you were talking about consistency through the city. One of the things I got from the west side, feedback from the west side, is they were saying, we're not like the east side. We have a certain ambiance of funkiness or something like that. Not exactly in those words, but in other words, they were holding to a different standard of lawn type, I think. So as much as I'd like to see, I personally, I like the way it has a certain vagueness to it and room for interpretation. But I think we do need to get a better idea of what noxious is in that sense. But again, the idea of consistent all the way through the city, this is one of the things I got coming back at me from my Ward 1, just so you know.
Yeah, that does create some problems, just so you know. Whenever people receive a 5-day notice, we have to send that out certified mail to cut grass and weeds. If you don't do it, the city has a contractor that will go do it, and we've been contracting all summer for those services. Actually, I had the contractor came in this morning, tried to mow a property over the weekend. The property owner threatened him, and so tomorrow he'll have a police escort if the grass wasn't mowed. So it can get, and I've asked actually to how to obtain police escort to go do investigations on complaint. So it is very sensitive to some people about, what my rights are to maintain my property in a way that doesn't harm others.
About how many of these are actually occurring during the summer or during the year? How many times do you have to send out weed letter or actually cut somebody's grass? Contract for it?
I'll have to get that information to you, just exactly how many times we've contacted the contractor. A lot of times when people receive the 5-day notice, they go ahead and cut it, and then there's a show-up fee that has to be paid. But we've still gone through all the administrative steps. Normally, what we try to do to avoid all the paperwork, the writing, the certified mail, is we actually knock on the door ask someone, do you need help getting your grass cut? As a matter of fact, we'll, if we can, try to put them in contact with people who will do that for them on a regular basis. Some people are handicapped and can't get it done. Others have other problems related to finance, those kinds of things. We deliver trash bags and leaf and lawn bags to people to try to help them. So we try to work with them first and actually do a 30-day notice if we have a unique situation like that under the housing code as opposed to the 5-day notice for grass and weeds. We let people know that the city provides a service to pick up they'll pick up bundled up sticks, debris, bags of grass and leaves. We let them know about other programs in other city departments also. So we're working very closely with the neighbors to try to avoid all this paperwork if possible. But what I can get to you is the exact number of times that we have had to get to the point to send out the 5-day notice.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Yeah.
Thanks, Thompson.
Well, thank you, Steve, yes.
Okay, over there.
Okay, I have no other miscellaneous. So finance and personnel, Jim?
Okay, Finance and Personnel Committee. First item on our agenda is appropriations ordinance that we introduced at the last meeting, Ordinance 12507. It was a long list of adjustments to appropriations, mainly to water and sewer funds. I don't know. Walker, did everybody get a copy of this? Okay. Actually, I have an annotated copy of that ordinance that just breaks it down. How about, instead of just going over it, we just make copies of this and give it to everybody, so you'll have it at second reading, and if you have specific questions about something, we can talk about it then. Otherwise, I think it'd just be confusing to go through this. So, will that'll work? Okay. Further questions, please, we'll talk about it next week at second reading. The next item on the agenda, the end of a calendar year is a time to begin discussions of budgets for the next calendar year. And part of that discussion usually involves our auditor giving us her expectation of revenues for 2008.
Ready?
Auditor Hess.
Okay. As of September 30th, the tax receipts are up 3%. This is probably the main thing I want to put out there first so we know whether our revenue, or the main source of our revenue for the general fund is going to be on target. That translates to about $200,000 right now, plus hopefully another $50,000 to $60,000 by the end of the year. I don't expect that amount to go up any, and I hope it stays at that rate. Last year we ended the year with only a 2% increase over the previous year. My preliminary revenue projections show a decrease in total revenue next year. This is not really a bad thing. Some of that has to do with debt reduction. When I roll over a note, it's booked as revenue. And although the sewer fund has debt problems, other funds such as East State Street, the parking garage, the community center, and the EPA debt funds have reduced revenue because we've been paying down on the loans. Also, you might recall that we paid off the final OWDA debt in the water department. And although we took out a $200,000 note in the water department for the Columbus Road project this year, I'm hopeful, as always, that we might be able to pay that off next year. The mayor has suggested, and I agree, that we should transfer the Carriage Hill Booster Fund revenue to the water debt fund. It's about $13,000. Next, I'll talk about changes for next year in the general fund. Tangible personal property and homestead tax revenues are going down. I think we all know that. However, the local government funds are going up after being frozen for several years. I'm not sure how that will translate. My guess is that it will be a wash. In other words, no real increase in revenue. But we'll see. I will probably get some projections from the county auditor's office on some of these things before the end of the year. Some good news in the general fund. We expect the developers' fees and rental permits to go up. Also, the interest rates have been going up, and I expect that to continue next year. Just as an aside, keep in mind that the interest rate increases affect quite a few of our funds. We do divide that up among most of our funds, actually. So we have projected increases for quite a few of those, although it's modest in the big picture. Parking ticket revenue will probably not go up much. The collection process that we, council instituted has been in place for a while. I suspect that most of the older delinquencies have been collected. The people who are going to pay those have paid those, but I don't expect that to go down dramatically either. As far as some other fund highlights, the parking garage, meter revenue will probably go down a little bit. Council increase the time for the money on the meters in there because of the new meter rates, but the Horizon payment should increase. We should have an increase in that money. Parking garage debt, we might be able to pay that off next year. We paid $150,000 down this year, so now it's at $200,000. I see Carol smiling.
Perfect.
I know.
Yes.
really-
Beginning and end.
It's very nice to look at those figures when they reach that point where you realize that you're close and can do that. It's kind of like the water fund debt and some of the others. In street rehab, small cities, and the issue 2 funds, the grant money will be gone. We do, however, have the $245,000 in the art grant coming in. Well, getting to the end, I think we've discussed the issues with the sewer fund long enough, so I won't address that fund tonight. I just want to say that, however, while I'm glad that you've initiated an increase in the sewer rates, I think we will still have issues with this fund because of the heavy debt. We've dug a pretty deep hole borrowing more money to make loan payments the last couple of years.
I think Ray gave us a synopsis on some of that. Should have been in everybody's mailbox. dated
Yeah,
October
did everybody get
17th.
that? Yeah.
And the worst thing is that not only do we have, this fund has a bunch of people who are out on leave, and so we have overtime issues. So we're
Well-
taking almost $100,000 and putting it in, I mean, which is a lot of money.
I know.
It's part of, and it's at the point now, and we asked actually Beverly to clarify that for us today, didn't we? We're trying to figure out how it could be that much. I mean, we're taking then what would be effect, pay off FEMA money to pay overtime because people are out. And, so
That's
it's
right.
like the
There's
worst
absolutely no
possible
cushion
scenario.
in that fund. So when you
Right.
have something like that happen, yeah, there's no cushion to go ahead and pay those kinds of, debts that you have, expenses. And that's part of this ordinance that Jim was just talking about. A lot of that money that's to be appropriated in water and sewer is in the personnel lines.
It's $100,000 when you tally it
Total.
all up, which is a lot of money.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Not surprised.
Excuse me, if we're interrupting here, to talk about the sewer fund in
I think she
particular,
said she was
and
done.
that we raised the rates for next year. There's been some discussion about hiring a financial person to look at our sewer rates and debts, and maybe give us a projection of how should we be handling this for the next 5 years to deal with that? Do you concur that that might be a good way to look at a longer picture than just next year?
Oh, I do. I certainly do. I do. I think that Nancy has a point. I'd like to know how much it will cost us.
Yeah.
But, and I just think I got that information from Dennis Schwally, a contact person, and we just haven't had a chance to follow up on that. But, no, I think this is going to be a long-term effort. At a conference I went to this year, there was a presentation on debt and sewer rates, sewer water rates, a lot of that, and it showed how if you increase your sewer fund rates 1% every year for 5 years, but you don't increase them for 5 years, at the end of 5 years, it would take 30% increase to make up for that amount of money if you had increased it every year for a year. Did I explain that right? But you have that cumulative effect when you raise them a little bit every year, you're raising them on top of a raise, whereas if you wait and don't raise them for years, then the amount you have to raise them to make up for that is quadruples.
Well, we're still paying off our initial 1988 technology that's not even in force anymore. So, I mean, we have debt that goes back to the Clean Water Act that has been abandoned as technology, so, I mean, it's more complex than just
Well,
catching
it
up.
is, and it's hard. All those OWDA loans that feel like they've been sitting there forever, some of the other things feel like they're within reach of being paid off, and even the small loans we've taken out for projects, you know, $200,000 here and there, $300,000, doesn't seem like a lot, but when you already have this, you know, almost $700,000 OWDA debt to pay off every year, it's just really hard to get ahead. I don't know how we can keep up with it.
Okay, so Kathy, Paul actually, and since we're talking about the sewer fund a little bit, Paul mentioned that red tag fees and the turn on and off fees all went into water. Could you check in to see, is that true? Are you the one that
There
said
were
that?
a couple of years, a few years back. I
Yeah,
forget when
can
it
you go
switched over
back
to
and check and see
splitting.
how much didn't go into the sewer fund in those years?
Right, we actually talked about that today, the mayor and I.
How many years you want to go back? 'Cause
Yeah.
it's been
Let's
that
go
way.
back, let's see, when did we do those new turn-on
20?
fees? No, let's go
Yeah.
5. I mean, you know, it was somebody's decision a
I've
long
got-
time ago.
Well, I have the year-end revenue reports in my office that go back through Sarah's time. I mean, it's 19
10.
years worth of them.
Yeah.
Take me about half hour, 40 minutes to do it.
Okay. That may be, and then from here on in.
The concept there is right now, I think you're splitting it 50/50. Maybe we should be dumping
We
it
just
into,
started that this year.
okay, starting this year, maybe we should be dumping it into the sewer just to balance out for the next 19 years.
Well, that's exactly what we
That's what I
discussed
told the
today,
office. Okay,
you know?
But it's just like the 580, you know, the other thing that Rick came up with that was, you know, something I thought it was self-evident, and then we, you know, like where the money goes with the, into the debt fund, I've lost.
The tap fees.
Yeah,
Tap fees.
tap fees, yeah, thank you. And
This is obviously an area of great interest and one that requires a lot of thought and innovative decisions. But let's get through the auditor's report. and
Oh, that's okay.
We'll have plenty of time to talk about.
Yeah, right.
I don't have very much more to say anyway, but yeah, so those are two things we'll look at. We still want to follow up on a consultant and track the tap fees and see what kind of figure we come up with from that. So far, those are my 2 pieces of homework. Okay. Finally, while the recreation fund is stable, the community center fund is in trouble. It's been running very close to the cuff for a couple of years now. The mayor has already put into place rate increases for programs. However, after discussing the revenue budget with the mayor this afternoon, we would like to propose a change in the tax mix. Our suggestion would be to reduce the general fund amount from 74% to 72%, increase the capital improvements from 2 to 3%, and add an allocation for the community center of 1%.
Can you say those percentages
Sure.
again?
The general fund currently gets 74%. We would like to reduce that to 72% and take 1% of that 2 and put it in capital improvements, which would go from 2 to 3%, and then add a 1% allocation for the community center.
So
That
in
makes
order
sense.
for us to judge what you're talking about, Kathy, could you give us a sort of a cash flow for capital improvements, like where did the money go? How much went to recreation, how much went to other areas over the last 2 years or 3 years? Just so we have a handle on it?
It's
Sure.
really easy because the biggest, we bought 2 major things in the last 2 years. $500,000 for Nuclear Electronics to replace phone systems citywide and the internet. And we spent $400,000 a year before that on a new fire truck. So outside of that, we've been spending $100,000 to $150,000 a year.
And so, and the phone system was a combination of general fund and proprietary funds, right?
It's all allocated in the general fund right now.
But some is administered.
Once it's actually done, we can then get up a worksheet and say, send bills to the others that can afford it.
Okay. Because as I recall, we had peanuts, but still money coming out of capital improvements maybe.
Right, capital improvements, I think 10 years ago was 8% of our budget, our
Right.
general fund money, and we were able to do some significant, not, right now, we're not able to do a whole lot.
I'm just talking about what kind of sales job you're going to have to do to get me to swallow this.
Yeah, I got that.
You understand what I'm saying?
So, well,
So,
anyway, in
what is-
closing.
What is
Okay, go ahead.
recreation right now in terms of the income tax mix, and what is the, you're going
Well,
to increase 1% right now for the
okay.
community, but that's,
It's at 5% right now.
community's at 5, and we'll go up to
And
6.
the recreation is at recreation itself is, right, it includes the Arts West, is at 5%.
Okay. And that
All
stays
that's
the
in
same.
the community center is the dedicated 0.5%, $260-some thousand.
Okay.
It
So
ha-
you go from 1.05 from 0.05 to 1.05? No.
Well, no, 1% of
Oh,
what we
income
collect
tax.
income tax-wise that gets distributed equals about $75,000.
Okay.
And 0.1%, or 0.5% is 263,000.
Okay.
So a dedicated tax generates an awful lot more money than a percentage of the 1.4
Total
that
income
we
tax.
collect in general, because so much of it's going elsewhere. I mean, total income tax collections are what, around the, with the dedicated, a little over $8 million a year, of our $24 million of revenue a year.
Yeah, between 8 and 9.
Okay.
So that's about a third of our total revenue. And, yeah, so the community center doesn't get, their money comes off the top,
Yeah.
that dedicated
Yeah,
tax.
from that bond.
Recreation fund gets 5%
Sorry.
after the top is taken off, but community center doesn't.
At a future meeting, could you also help us to understand how rentals contribute to this in the regular community center and also in Arts West? I think that was a question we discussed today in the meeting we had between 11 and 12 on personnel. Just in general, how, I mean, it seems to be a happening place, or, you know, there seems to be a lot of activity, but I just guess I'd like to know
What the rentals.
what the,
incomes
how
look
the
like
rentals are generated and making sure they go back into the fund.
in the correct
Yeah.
funds. Okay. Okay. Start writing that down. I have a list of things to do.
I'm sorry.
Anyway, finally, my total revenue projection for 2008 at this time is $32,207,976 compared to $33,950,847 last year. So that's a decrease in about $1.7 million.
That includes borrowing.
But some of that is a debt reduction. I mean, we paid off hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt last year. I'd
as you
say that
said.
would be the major decrease in that. But what that also tells me is most other things are going to stay pretty stagnant. You know, in the general fund and most funds, you have, you know, we get an increase in one place and then a reduction in another. So it kind of balances out. Any other questions?
Any other specific questions at this time?
No,
Thank you. Okay, we passed out at last meeting a little cheat sheet about budget process, and on two-sided, on the back, it had a timeline, which began really with the revenue projections from the auditor on tonight, and then it suggests some weekly meetings to talk about pay scales, staffing levels, insurance, tax mix, which we just touched on now, and some other things, leading up to budget proposal for 3 meetings in December. My question is, if we control these discussions, do you want to have them at regular council meeting evenings, Mondays, or do you want to have them on another night? I think a couple years ago, we did them on a separate night. Last year, we did them before the meetings, I believe. There are several options. These are some discussions that we need to have as a group. We'll be drawing on information from the mayor, the auditor, and other sources, but any thoughts on this, or want me to just?
Where were you?
Do you know what other issues, you want to talk about? I mean, I have my timeline from last year, and, I typed this up and changed the dates. I didn't know if you even wanted to meet next Monday.
We're not
And-
meeting next Monday.
Okay, so you can take that off.
November 11th is Veterans Day and we're closed.
Oh, that's right, November 12th.
So we can go to the 12th.
So we'll go to the 12th.
So those are things, I just quickly looked at the calendar and typed this up before that last meeting, but I left those blank because we had different issues to discuss last year. We had staffing and the pay scale of the school that we changed. And,
Jim, I'd like to meet with, there've been, just walking around, I guess I'm not in my office between 8 and 6 usually, so I see people, and I'd like to talk to the next level down a little bit about what they need. I'd like to have Scott and Nick Joseph, the plant operators, come in and talk from mine. Just if that's possible, And that would mean water and sewer, right. I mean, I just would like to talk to them about their long-term goals. I mean, I know there's the big telemetry question, which I think might be taken care of by the communication system, but it's just, sometimes you hear different things, and maybe my
Yeah,
committee could meet on a different night.
Okay, that would be a different night, but I was going to suggest the service safety director, Mr. Hazlett, was having some of those conversations, and I was going to meet with him later this week to tune in to see what he's been hearing, asking those same questions. So,
It might lead you in a direction that you want to go more specifically.
okay. Well, let me make we won't meet next week.
We're not
It's the
meeting.
the fifth Monday of October. We're not going to meet. On, so what will that make our,
the next meeting would have to be Tuesday the 13th.
And we've already met in that small committee on personnel. I mean, we've done a lot of that work already.
well, we have a committee night. We have a committee night on November 5th. So why don't I just have something ready for a committee meeting on November 5th? I'll give you a status report of what we have, what we still need, and and we'll decide where we're going on November 5th. Committee meeting.
So you have a committee meeting on the 5th, even though that's a regular meeting night.
That's a regular meeting.
That's a regular meeting now, I'm sorry.
So you could have it at 7 o'clock.
Yeah,
When do
unless
we
you
have
had
public
it 7.
hearings?
We do.
We have 3 public hearings.
So we can go
okay.
till the
Then
13th,
we'll go back to the 12th. I'm sorry.
or the 12th, whatever it is,
Which is a Tuesday.
the Tuesday.
Whatever
I
that
won't be
Tuesday.
here.
Kathy, thanks for putting that together. It's a really helpful framework. I think it helps structure the discussion, and I appreciate you pulling that out of your,
Time to get started. It's always hard to get started on this.
Well, we've been started, which is not
Okay.
public yet.
So we'll aim at the 13th, is that what we decided, the 12th, the 13th is the Thursday?
Don't look at me, I'm not available.
Okay, but that, you have a calendar time.
Yeah,
I have a
Tuesday.
couple other miscellaneous items that I did make copies and leave at people's desks. We have some requests from the chief of police and the fire chief. Chief Troxel is asking us to transfer some funds from his professional services line, to professional services line from payroll line, $8,000. He has a part-time secretary, which is being paid for from other lines, and he has surplus in the personnel line, would like us to move that to his professional services line.
Is that a permitted spot? I mean, have we granted a half-time secretary in that? Is it one of those we have? When did we put it back?
I think this is just professional services contract.
Oh, it's like an internship?
Part-time position. It's a contract.
Well, now we know where we can find some money next year if we need it.
I didn't hear what you
We had
said.
budgeted that as a student intern for 20 hours a week at, I think, 1,300 hours. He chose, after talking with myself and the personnel director, rather than changing the student intern every year or two, he'd rather have somebody that wants to work part-time. I brought that to the personnel committee, and we got into a whole discussion of how we're going to change the non-union ordinance, and that got put on hold to change that to intern/part-time. So he hired a part-time. That's how he got the business directory out and some other projects that he's been working on. And now the savings is where otherwise we would have had it in there. And it's contract services with one of the local contract agencies for personnel.
And that discussion about part-time and interns, the personnel director just sent me an update.
Right.
And asked us to include that in our discussion.
Right, I'd
with
ask her to
staff.
do that.
Okay, well, she did.
Good.
Okay.
But I thought interns were for the persons, sort of not to, I mean, I guess that's a question I've heard in other venues, but it just seems to me that it's not designed to circumvent
Well,
a decision
and
that
as
council made
you
earlier.
may well be correct, but because of
Oh, I
the
don't know if I-
discrepancy that there was in the ordinance and us not taking the opportunity to correct that in April, they have dealt with this in another way. They have some savings in what would be their personnel line they'd like to transfer. So that's the request, is that basically due to a situation which we probably should have dealt with earlier, but we didn't.
I refuse to take responsibility. I don't think you should
And we'll
either.
deal with it now. Okay. And I'm sorry, Mayor, I have the information here from the police chief, and I'm not sure I understand it. He's talking about the instances where qualified individuals might seek employment as a police officer in Athens. They may have prior police experience and have been or currently are in police and fire or PERS retirement systems. In our Ohio,
No, I think
go
this
ahead,
is-
I'm sorry, please.
I talked about this because he sent it out to a number of people, and one of those was the personnel director. The Civil Service Commission should technically make a recommendation if we're going to make this kind of change. The last time they looked at it, their interpretation of it was that unless it's been modified, this was more for charter cities could do that, but statutory could not. So she's going to take it to the Civil Service Commission and see what their thoughts of it are and recommendation back to you. And we're also going to check the law, because this effective date, it was November of 1999, so it may have been that this is a change that would include statutory cities. But we have to be cautious to make it. The other thing that she wished me to point out was just that we would have to find out to a certain extent what kind of procedure they went through in their hiring practices. Did they do a psychological evaluation? Did they do, we still want to do certain things with this. It just allows us, when we already have it in the union contract, that if someone has experience with another comparable agency, we can place them in the salary steps at different levels, and that's in the union contract with the FOP. He's just looking at ways to try to speed up the process.
Okay, that's what this is about.
Yeah.
But the
And there
personnel
also
director needs to
is
get-
a review going on because he's having to spend overtime dollars to keep some minimum shift levels. He may have to do some transfers of some funds or have some additional. Kathy and I have looked at, we've also got one from the Parking Enforcement Office that wanted some more 300 money, primarily to replace out some more meter heads with the digital, because we feel that's something that's good to do. It's less maintenance and everything. So Captain Pyle had a program for that. Was there anything else in that one, Kathy? Did you remember? I don't remember any others. But I'll have those well before, but I want you to know that those are just changes. There's also, when we finish our review of the revenue and expense in the community center, we want to take a look at realistically how to get through this year, because what was surprising to me was we received that $16,600 in from the High Department of Health for the electrical equipment and everything like that. So we wrote the PO and it came right back to us because we didn't have but $7,000. I'm thinking, I just deposited 16 we never even thought we were going to get, and but it got gobbled up through payroll and everything. I've really been impacted at the community center and at the pool, which lost money, as I told you a week or two ago, with this minimum wage change. Because what we had been doing, the federal minimum wage in the state of $5.15 an hour, and they would start somebody $5.75 or $6. All of a sudden it was $6.85, and swim aides who were getting $5.15 2 years ago were getting $6.85 this year. And even though we took in $108,000 of revenue, which was far and away above the best year money-wise we've ever had, the personnel costs at the pool alone, just in salaries, went up $24,000. And you just can't plan for that. And when you look at the fitness center and babysitting, their after-school care that we do at the community center, and are charged to those line items, I mean, I think that when we look at that as the total cost, we've cut back on people as much as we can, but I think it's I'm not blaming anything about it. It's just we have to react pricing structure-wise, and the public has to understand that they're going to have to pay more because we're paying our people more.
Would you?
I'm just going back to this memo from Mr. Mayor, and according to his, 3 or 4 sentences here, is he suggesting beneficial if council would enact an ordinance that grants the ability to waive the 35-year-old maximum? So right now, it says that we can't hire a policeman
Or a fireman.
or fireman if they're over 35 years old. Right. And so this is a,
And that's based also in a higher revised code, because if
Yeah.
someone has no experience, they're saying is that more than likely if they go for the full 25, you're going to disability retirement them before they
right,
hit the age, because it's very physically demanding, especially for a fireman.
right. So he is suggesting that we waive that maximum under certain circumstances, right? Is that the issue that's kind of before us?
That we
Or
give
his
them the
suggestion?
right to do it.
The right, so they could hire a
Right.
40-year-old
That's
person?
the issue.
Although the
If-
issue is
if-
not before us at the moment, because
Right.
it needs to go to the Civil Service Commission for their recommendation first.
Okay,
So once it comes back, if we can do it, then let's just get the thing going so we get the firemen, the
Yeah.
policemen on the street.
And this condition is that they are already in PRS or fire or police PRS? Okay, and that's, okay.
And that was the part that I wasn't quite clear about, but we'll work
Well, the
on it.
PRS only hits the police department and the communication officers. That's the only actually sworn officers that are contribute to the PERS system.
So then, in other words, that's saying, well,
we can,
Right.
yeah.
those are the years that they were in those organizations are the years that they acted as police officers.
Right.
Okay.
Up to 5 years.
So that's what he wants us to.
An experienced person, in other words, which
Yeah.
is a good thing.
Who might be
Again, Paul.
39.
Do they have to actually go into a police cadet program? Is that part of that's where they end up, regardless of their qualifications? I mean, that's
No,
why
I
I'm
think
looking at
it's
their
a
high
very-
revised code down there at the bottom.
See, that's what's part of the reason, Paul, when I want to have the legal folks look at this, because maybe they're using some terminology I'm not familiar with.
Okay.
And police department qualifications, is that standalone, or police cadet program, is that a standalone?
Okay, that's
All
what I
we're
wanted.
worried about is police department, because we don't have a police cadet program. But
One more question. I seem to recall you saying that the minimum wage is going to go up again in January,
That's-
so we have to budget for that, too.
Yeah, we haven't received official notification, but I've read in the Columbus Dispatch, that's what's going to happen.
Okay.
So we got another 15 cents on the, I forget, I don't know what that is as a percentage.
Okay. Just wondering.
Finally, I have a request from the government channel. At least one of their employees has been having some health problems, which were serious enough that the Bureau of Workers' Compensation came down and looked, and they kind of traced it to some of the non-ergonomic furniture that has been handed down and ended up in the government channel area. And so Workers' Compensation is offering a match up to $50,000 with a 20% local match to replace some furniture, maybe do some more new monitors that have a better angle. We, at this point, just need an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director and the government channel to apply for this grant.
Is there a deadline or no?
I don't see it in
That's what they
here.
have in those training places now.
And this just came to us, so we've got this one thing. So, is it okay if I bring that up next week and we'll discuss it further? Did you want to say something about it?
Well, just that, all what we're really asking right now is the ordinance that would be authorizing us to apply for a grant and providing up to 20% matching funds, up to a maximum of $10,000, probably on a capital improvements fund. That's really we don't know if we're going to get it, but you have to go through this with an employee and have the workers' comp look, and then that's the only way you get eligible for the grant. We're not eligible yet, but if we become eligible, we would like to go for that, because it would be able us to stretch our dollar a lot further to, maybe you'll get new chairs. Maybe those aren't ergonomically right. I don't know.
And then we could get the leftovers up here.
Oh, what a deal.
Oh,
So do we expect actually to go up to $40,000 with chairs?
it would not be just
Very
chairs.
expensive
Okay.
chairs.
Everything, the tables,
I want one of those
the,
chairs.
It would not just be a chair.
okay.
No.
Chairs.
Monitor.
It's like workstations right now. If you go into most computer labs, the computer isn't sitting on top of the desk. It's down in the desk with a glass over top, and you're looking downward. And ergonomically, people think that's better to do. So that's where we'd explore. And I think also in my conversation with Ron, he said, you're eligible by departmental type area. So it's designed more for larger cities. 50,000 to go pretty far with, but if we ran out and we still had others that needed it to be done, we could apply for another grant.
Okay.
This is a safety grant from the Bureau of Workers'
Right.
Compensation, and each grant has a maximum of 40,000 of BWC money, 10,000 of local match for total.
The idea is to
But
reduce
that's just the
future
total.
claims.
Okay, thank you. I don't think I have anything else. Do you have anything, Mayor, miscellaneous?
Nope.
Not at this
You gave me a
time.
chance to talk, and I did.
Okay, next is city services.
Okay, city services, we have several items on the agenda. One of them is tap fees, and so that council members who aren't familiar with this can understand what it means. We charge people who are not currently on the sewer and who are expanding places, water and sewer. And so just go to the second page and take a look at how tap permit fees were figured for OU Student Center. All of it is based upon something that is in the Athens Revised Code, 03796, which says the sum of $1,000 per equivalent EPA residential unit. Those are the key words that are used in order to install new items within the corporate limits. We bump it up 50% outside of the corporate limits. And so those of you that don't understand what the tap fee, or haven't really seen it in operation before, you can see how each of the different functions were assessed. I believe Nick Carr does the original work, and it's checked by Ray Hazlett. So that's just where it starts. And Ray has suggested that we amend 03796 to increase the amount because of our debt to $1,500 for the basic tap fee charge, which will have impacts on everything else. And he has it's all worked out. You can see how it goes through on the Student Center. That's the one that was convenient. Actually, it didn't exactly come out this way, but this is how the impact units are assessed. We used to charge $100, I believe, and then we went to $1,000, and now we're up to $1,500. One question that I have is when it gets paid, and the answer that Ray gave me a couple minutes ago is it gets paid whenever they're about to do it, to do the actual work. And the work is generally assessed separately, at least in the agreements I've seen. You can see that actually on the university one where it says, let's see, time and material costs for the physical installation are not included. Okay. So and this is some of the question. He said water doesn't have to be done, but the sewer tap fees should go up.
Time and material.
Just sewer.
I think there's another section.
Okay. Anybody have a problem with that?
Water tap fees. I don't think it's.
Okay, one thing I asked is, let's have a bargain basement sale and have anybody who pays by the end of the January or December, and Gary said we couldn't do it. Because there are a lot of permits that are hanging out there, and I don't know how, it's going to be a little dicey, I think, because there are permits that haven't been acted on yet. And anyway, if you can slip them the extra charge to it. No, I didn't say that. But anyway, there it is. Okay, so now you'll never be innocent again on tap fees. The other question I have is, how about, and I will open it up to the wider community. Right now, duplexes are assessed at $625. Should we make single-family and duplexes essentially the same? And then after that, the triplexes end up being assessed because of the way the EPA amounts are.
Why single family duplexes?
Well, you're talking about square foot. I mean, you probably have, in terms of, in many duplexes, you'd have more bathrooms because they're newer houses than a lot of the older houses in
I know, so
town.
why make them the same? I guess that's my question.
Why not make them the same?
Because there are more people in the duplex.
No, it's
Per.
each one.
Oh, so you're saying per. Okay, per.
Yeah, that's what yeah.
I always assumed this was the cost of installation of the meter and the line, so why wouldn't it be the same? I mean,
It's buying into the system is what it is. We have the debt basis for the calculation of
Oh, okay.
1,500. And then the actual labor is on top of that.
Okay.
So, but let's go back. Does anybody have an objection to saying duplexes and single families are assessed at the same rate?
All right, so you mean...
Per unit.
Per unit.
That's what confused me. I
Yeah.
thought you were saying a duplex as a unit is the same as a single family.
No, it
Okay.
would end up being 1,250.
Right,
In
that's
the-
what I think needs to be there.
The point of that statement is that generally a duplex just has one tap. So they've only been paying for one tap, but now we're saying they pay, because it's a duplex, they pay twice that
Yeah.
tap.
Right, that wasn't clear.
So their charge, instead of being $1,250, would be $2,000 or $3,000 for sewer.
Nancy, I'd just suggest that, I would recommend that you stay away from, in any legislation you do, from the words based upon our debt structure.
No, there's nothing, I was just going to change
It'll,
this.
debt eventually gets paid, but I think you're buying into
my
the
lifetime?
capital. Well, it depends upon how long you live. I mean, you could be Methuselah, we'll do it.
That's what it'll take.
But really, they're buying into the capital assets
Yeah.
of a water and a sewer system, or a storm drain type system, because that's the one we missed. We don't have anything to buy.
That's the next one of mine.
Hardly anything to do the storm drain system. It's still $150, I think. And of course, some places that's a creek bed or an open ditch, and other places it's a brick storm thing that was put in 100 years ago, and others it's pretty good. But it's still a system that we maintain through sewer department funds, and it does have capital assets. That's what you're buying into. You don't get in for free, you have to buy in, just like a condo association or anything else. It's a water association,
Yeah, I was-
sewer association.
Just going to amend 13796 and increase the amount.
Yeah.
And, the capital, but it's just that his basis was telling me the 1,500.
Yeah, I just don't want anybody to listen to the tape later on and think we're basing it on deck. We're
No,
really
I
basing
don't
on
have it,
assets.
I don't have it in, anywhere in here.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, Ray, what did we decide on the storm sewer this morning? Your recommendation?
Yeah, we talked about $1,000 for that.
$1,000 per storm? Okay. It's 150?
And when was the last time that was changed? Has that
100
been
years
changed?
ago? I don't know. It was $100
We
when we
didn't
did
change it
this.
when we changed 12 years ago to add from 100 to 150 up to it,
Yeah.
and probably should have, but didn't.
Because we were waiting for the EPA
At
mandate.
that time, we were waiting for the mandate, we were working on the stormwater management plan, which I still got sitting in the desk.
That's section 2A.
We ducked that one.
No,
Probably
that
should do
isn't.
it.
That isn't, no, it's a new section.
It's a
It's going
whole
to be a
new
separate
section.
New
ordinance.
section.
Anybody have a problem with that? No?
Pastime.
Okay, past time. All right. Next thing on my agenda is Justice Administration Grant Law Enforcement. It's called a JAG-LE, I don't know, JAGLE, grant application. And this is what, the Captain Pyle has requested money, or requested us to give permission for him to go for a grant, for the police department to go for a grant to fund a surveillance system for the parking garage in the police department. They would also like to, then they talk about, we will spend up to $10,000 from our law enforcement trust fund in addition to this money. We will also have significant in-kind because we intend to use an in-house employee with advice from Ron Forrest. The system will enable us to put multiple cameras in the parking garage that are recorded at the police department. The entire system can be monitored real-time, and the police department camera system is also considered to be archaic. If they could just get a water cannon to go along with it, I would be especially happy. But what do you think? Is there anyone who has an objection? Yeah?
I have a question. How indestructible are these cameras?
I don't know.
We've tried before.
They'll be in the stairwells too,
Right.
is that right?
Yeah, I asked
Yeah.
Tom about that, and they'll be placed, they're used in other parking garage locations and in other college towns, so they're designed to deal with those kind of vandalism issues.
That's,
The problem
Old Castle
before.
Line was rugged, not indestructible.
Yeah.
Rugged, not indestructible.
Rugged, yeah.
Okay.
As long as I don't have to watch what's happening.
Monitor your
I am
24
not
hours.
I
going
just
to
have a
monitor.
Put the monitors in your house.
Is the
Get on the
activity
jury.
that takes place there that we want to discourage primarily, I mean, is it criminal or is it really just, people,
It's public urination is
public urination?
That's-
is
No.
criminal.
And
And
do
now-
we think that the cameras are going to somehow deter people from doing that?
I hope so.
I mean, do we have any evidence to suggest that that's the case?
I don't know.
I mean, they might love it.
Any effort
But
is.
then they would get fined. They may love it,
Oh,
but they get
good.
fined.
Okay, so we could identify them and then fine them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Plus
And
we had all of that
graffiti as
loss where they
well.
went in and
Yeah.
opened the meters and took
Oh,
the money.
that's another question. Would they be in the elevators as well? That's.
In the what?
They're my bugaboo. The elevators.
Elevators.
The nasty stuff in the elevators.
Yeah, elevators, I would think, would be
Elevators and stairwells,
a good spot
and also where they can see the meters.
for safety.
Okay, and they don't have my understanding is it's a conceptual basis, so they don't have a total plan, but you could say the elevators. Okay,
A lot of it
I won't
depends
put it
upon
in
how
ordinance.
much, if we're successful, how much do
Yeah.
they give us?
Right,
You know, it's going to judge how far we can go with it. But again, we're just looking for other revenue streams that, this one we ran across and we feel there's a need because of the theft to the parking garage, the
Vandalism.
smell and
Yeah.
vandalism and the
right.
things. That's the way to try, but
No, I
lower
appreciate
cost
it.
to us.
We appreciate this effort, and we'll have it up for first reading. We will suspend on the 5th in order to make the deadlines, I believe that. Okay? So I can't imagine very many people would be opposed to that, but we'll see. Okay, the next thing under miscellaneous, this is in response to something I heard from someone who may or may not remain anonymous, but this is concerns the sewer developments in University Estates. And the question for me is, do we allow a short-term, low-cost development, or do we look to a long-term, reduced cost and, sort of think in long-term? And the specific issue is, if we do not intervene or encourage the utilities director to do this, then the various compartments, the various segments of the University Estates development will come in each with their own pump station. What we would want, and I think that I'm asking you how we would accomplish this, is ask to have gravity flow and reduce the number of pump stations, because the electrical costs over the long haul will be substantial. So now we're reading the ordinance, and what we need to do, and according to the administration, this could be accomplished, how did you say again? How would we do this? To go to the 2 pump station model as opposed to 5? So we want them to use gravity flow. They're on top of the hill, for goodness sakes.
Wherever possible, we need to replace any lift stations with gravity flow,
Yeah.
as long as it can be engineered.
And
Shouldn't be a question of economics.
I mean, if somebody for their own convenience wants us to place the house in a location that it can gravity, then it's their cost for a local booster station. What I'm concerned about is more than one lot attached to a booster pump. The EPA then considers that's part of your system city. I don't want that.
And we pay the power then, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want that at all. And
Okay. So in
I
this,
think part of it is it's an economic issue, because they're looking at these 67 to 70-foot wide lots, in a pricey neighborhood in a way, but to try to get the cost down of it, sometimes you're better off making the lots a little bigger and not having the booster pumps and not having the long-term cost to us, but it really isn't, we talked about it at the Planning Commission, staff has talked about it with them, they're still submitting it those ways, and, we just like some language in the acceptance of the plats that say, guidance to us to say more firmly, no, you can't do that.
okay, so can you get that from the mayor then, so we would have to amend the plat we're reading right now? I mean, the ordinance?
We have not
I don't
started
think so.
reading the plat.
Okay.
Because the plat is just a plat, it's not,
Okay.
it's a,
I just want to know
that's why the
how to do
Planning
it. I
Commission
don't
didn't do
care.
it.
Yeah.
Because really, we don't approve the sewer systems or water systems get put in individually platted subdivisions.
And
That's
the,
an administrative function, but we don't want the administration, being ourselves, to create unnecessary expenses in our minds for the city.
I agree.
I agree.
and we haven't read that yet because the plat had to sit for
Right.
14 days before we started reading it. So we just need to, we don't
Get that
have to
language.
amend, we just
Yeah,
have to get it set up right.
Okay.
Nancy, yeah, you had more conversation with Ray about this than myself.
I didn't know if I was supposed to tell who I heard from. Right.
We'll work on it together.
Yeah, no, just give us the language and we'll get it in the ordinance. Debbie will take care of that, won't she?
Thank
Okay,
you.
my last item on my agenda is this, and it has to do with our many communications on pit bulls. And so I hate to even bring up the topic, but I thought maybe there's a bigger topic that goes way back 2 decades in an earlier services committee in which there was a trouble right here in River City, and there was a splitting up of functionality, and the city took over for all the right reasons for humane treatment of animals, the dog catcher, the dog safety officer, the dog warden position, and that was a long time ago. And Lana Planasek took care of it, and to my mind, having driven out to another municipality or non-incorporated area in this town and seen the dogs running loose, I mean, we have a very good system in place, I think, at least in my judgment, very good. It's worked well, but I guess the question is, and I'd like the administration to make a recommendation, do we really need to continue? Because we all pay our licensing fees, it goes to the county. And we have established and accomplished humane treatment. The cat issue is there. The humane, the cat shelter is moribund. The dog shelter is doing well. And so I guess I've heard informally that in general, we're thinking about not continuing the position because the reasons that we did it are gone or have been resolved, and the pit bull legislation feeds into this, because how can we do pit bull legislation if we don't have a dog warden?
Right. Well, part of this is, and I've had some discussion with one of the county commissioners about that, because they're asking, they're saying to me that the dog, their way of operating the dog pound warden, whatever you want to call it, and what the state law says is that they are to patrol. I think patrol is much different than respond to citizens' concerns and such, because I say, ask them, well, what do you do about raccoons, say, that the resident complains about, do you set up a trap, or do you, they basically don't do a whole lot of that stuff, but Lana was doing, or we also put them into contact with other pest control and capture type private firms that are around town. They brought up that, your police department, then you're going to have to handle those things that are outside of the realm of patrolling. And if you have an animal that is injured, say because of a car wreck or something, who's going to deal with it? Because it's not under their supposedly revised codes. There's two things I'm doing here. One is I've asked by email Tom Plow to get together with me and we can start discussing this, and I'm asking the law director to do some research to be able to say, what are we paying for? Then I ask the other question is, if we fund this in some manner, is it possible for within the city limits of Athens to have a piggyback dog fee or cat license or anything else to help fund it? Because right now it's just coming out of our income tax dollars. And then we talk some about contracting with them rather than having our own part-time officer. And they would, throughout, I think, as a negotiating thing, 60% of what we were budgeting for animal control before they would do it for, so that we'd still realize a cost savings and they'd help get some money. They're operating their system in a deficit. They're putting $200,000+ of county general revenue money into their program.
And we pay taxes to them.
And I know. Well, sometimes the county talks like we were divorced or something,
Yeah.
that we're not a part
ours,
of it anymore.
yours.
I've had this discussion with them before. Whenever I bring that up anymore, they just say, don't go there. And I'm saying, I'm still paying those taxes.
Oh, yeah, sales, they have the sales tax in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to get into a.
So
but
having some discussion, I'll have a recommendation to council. I wanted to do that in this budget process.
But the position will be not in the city, you don't think?
I don't think so, because I think Lana was 62% employee, and toward the end there, she was ill frequently. She didn't have any sick leave left and was off without pay, and that's why we haven't been spending the full budget the last couple of years. So we've been able to get through, but part of that is that when she was off, one of the other animal control people from the county would cover for it, and so.
But we're part of the county.
Yeah. I know, that's part of the,
Well, I think it's,
dilemma.
yeah, the other thing you hear from people, and I know Lana said it was absolutely false, she said, most people say, oh, it's those students, they're the cause of all the problem. And she said, no, it's not the students. The students are not the problem. It's the big black dog out in the rural areas that are the problems. And they're not collecting dog license fees as much as, I mean, I don't know, this is just my assertion rather than hers. But, she said the students didn't create the problem. So we don't have to be feeling guilty about that.
no.
So you can all absolve yourself of guilt. It's not a student problem.
May I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
Okay. On this, the patrolling but not responding, when it was a city position, or when we had Lana, was she also responsible for responding? I guess my point is, I think for the city to have a response and not just a patrol would be really important. responding
We were
to animal.
responding to things, and if she was off, one of
Right,
the other
right.
county employees would respond.
Okay, yeah, so what I'm saying is.
They paid the other part of her salary. We rotated
Right.
truck. We would buy it, and then when it
Yeah,
wore
yeah.
out, the county would buy it, and then when it wore out, we'd buy it.
Yeah, I'm just saying that in your update and in your recommendation, I'm suggesting that we make sure that we keep the responding in there. That's all.
Oh,
Not
yes,
just-
I would not want to buy, patrolling we already get.
Right.
In my opinion, I mean, patrolling,
Is,
it's responding to.
That's
I mean,
important.
It's us
Right.
in the city that have led the way, that I'm sure there are county residents that come to our dog park. There's people from West Virginia that I've met there and
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
other states.
yeah.
But, we're responding to, not having dogs at large by having a dog park so that you can
Right.
be off leash and.
Okay, I guess I
you
meant
know.
responding to complaints and responding to dogs that might be loose or vicious. That's what I mean by responding.
Yeah.
That make sure we have those services.
Well,
That's
they
all.
do, they do respond in the county, because I've been out there when there's been one officer, and they've been down in shade taking care of a problem, so I don't know why they wouldn't respond in the city.
Okay, just
Well,
clarifying
I'm
to make
also
sure
asking
that
the
that's
law director to clarify.
part of the service.
What's
Okay.
the state law say on this?
Well, I mean, as long as we're paying into it, and we pay sales tax. I mean, we did it for all the right reasons, and I was probably the sponsor of the ordinance 20 years ago, but I just think the time has passed. She accomplished her goals. We did move toward humane treatment. We still have a cat problem. I don't know. Well, let's hear some recommendations in the future. What do you have?
Cat problems.
No, I mean, just too many to be euthanized. Yeah, so do I. All right, I'm through. Who's next?
That would be me.
Just a question, so it sounds like the options we have would be, and you're going to talk to the law director and the county positions, we either fund one ourselves, would be one extreme, in-house, or we don't have any whatsoever and rely on the county to provide the services. Is that it?
Or we have our police officers do it.
Police office.
And they
And then
do-
you're talking about a license, possible license fee, the city could find out if the city.
I want to
actually-
find out if there's any way to do any funding mechanism to be able to provide those services.
Okay. Okay. So these are the things that you're trying to find out, okay. That's what I was wondering.
Now, you raised the initial issue of pit bulls.
Well, I know, but we're not even going to, do not send any emails. I don't want to hear
No.
about it. And I don't want to have any discussion of this until we've clarified where we are, and then you can talk to the county.
Well,
I hope.
I understood that the mayor was going to make recommendations. Is that right? Okay.
On pit bulls?
Well, on dog control.
Send your emails to him.
Well, I mean, we got a lot of emails.
We have got a lot of
And one of them, I did
Oh, at
read the
least like
Contra Costa
6 or 7.
ordinance. And because I know that they're very forward-thinking and very detailed. I've known someone who worked for China. They're always kind of leading edge, Contra Costa. And it struck me that their ordinance was complex, but would require a lot of work, basically, in making sure that those conditions were met. So I think it's not a separate issue, and I think if we're going to look at any kind of, dog control, it's worth maybe glancing at that first, just suggesting it. I mean, we may not want one, I mean, there are a lot of emails where not breed, but viciousness or danger to citizens. And so I think it's worth looking at it and kind of saying, if we were to do something, what kind of manpower, person power would that really entail? Since we're talking about animals.
No, and you're talking about animals, but really the dog warden is really a dog.
Well, dogs, I'm talking about vicious dogs, okay?
Vicious cats too, aren't there?
Fine. But I think dogs are a little bigger and sometimes present more danger. So I'm just suggesting that it was a very sophisticated and very detailed ordinance, and if we're going to do something, maybe we ought to look at it.
Well, if I were God, I would take the money and put it into a police officer who would take care of police water.
Suggesting Toledo? I
No,
would-
it's Contra Costa, California.
Pedestrian
It was
and-
in one of the emails, which I'm sure you got copied on, because
Oh,
we got
yes.
so many of them.
I haven't read them all yet.
Oh, yeah, Contra Costa ordinance on,
I was going to create a file, new mayor, drop that right in.
right. Well, you can copy. Mayoral candidates should read it. Okay.
Yeah, well, it's just, we can't even take care of our basics. I mean, it just seems like it's
Yeah, but if
excessive.
we're having a proposal about dog services, why not deal with that too? That's all. I'm done.
Go.
Yes, arts and recreation. And I'll tell you right now, I don't have any miscellaneous, so this is good. Just take a look at this. I've got some comments of my own. Debbie and I worked on this last week, and I think it's getting there. And the concept of having a percent for art in Athens is because the city of Athens is unique in that I suspect, I don't have facts on this, that we have one of the highest per capita artists, at least in this area and perhaps statewide. We have a great number of artists in our community. And in our comprehensive plan, it addresses that artistic community in a lot of ways. And those were some of the things that have moved me over a considerable period of time to gather things to put this together. I believe that Mayor Coleman about a week ago referred to it as the sliver for art. I thought that was good. That he felt that Columbus certainly could give a sliver for art. Some things that are a little different here than what I first offered. Some of it came from you all, questions that came up when I talked about it, and some of it came from talking with the Chamber of Commerce, and had quite a lengthy discussion with not the entire chamber, but one of their executive business groups, and found that very helpful. That being said, what this asks for is 1% allocation for capital projects in the city projects over $1 million with a cap, and I left it open, either 100,000 or 200,000. I guess my thinking is probably the 100 is fine for it. You can't find it?
No, I found it.
Oh.
Section 3.
I was confused by that 100 followed by 200.
Oh, okay. I was leaving
It's
the
actually
option.
300,000.
Right, yeah, 300,000.
Section
No, I was
3.
leaving the option, and I guess I really feel that the 100 is quite adequate. We are a small city. We're not Toledo, we're not Columbus, we're not some of the other big cities that have percent for art. And really, the way that I and the Arts Commission put this together was with that in mind, that we are a small city. The biggest change in this language is that it says that the policy will encourage similar allocation for public art by private developers rather than mandating. Now, that being said, the folks at the Chamber of Commerce were delighted with that. They liked the encourage. They thought it should be encouraged citywide and so on. Also, Leslie Schaller and I, on behalf of the Arts Commission, are kind of taking on a little project where we are going to put together a collection of slides of current art in private developments. And there is quite a lot within our city. So we feel that by putting together a chamber presentation along that line, that people will be encouraged to do a percent for art. Now, I also am going to add that Gary has looked at this, and he doesn't even like us suggesting that the private developers. The exact note is, Gary does not think we should include private property, even if it is not mandated, but encourage. Perception is that it's expected. I don't agree with that, and I did find that a number of places use this language, this encourage language, so that it introduces the idea to the developers. One of the reasons that I like it in here is because it indicates that it could be included in the information given to the developers when they come for permits, so that they would get that information and then they can go to the Arts Commission and find out what that really means. And one of our developers in the Chamber of Commerce meeting said, well, I just had no clue about any of this. If I had known more about it, I might have made different choices in what I did to make my property look nice. And that happened to be the most impacted developer within the last year. Had we had this enacted and required the private developers, they would have been the big spender. The other things that I wanted to point out, I know that Bill asked, does it include land acquisition? So under project cost, that is eliminated, that you don't, it does not include the land acquisition. And I'm thinking that perhaps that it should also include as an exclusion permit costs. Just take that out of the mix. Taxes? Tap fees, well, that's a permit fee.
Okay.
That's the kind of thing that's what made me think of it. I was sitting there going, oh, perhaps we shouldn't include that. What else? Oh, in section 5, it says the following projects are exempt from the percent for art. Parking lots is in there, but we wanted to include the parking garage, so might play with that a little bit, that parking buildings would be included but not surface lots. So that might require a little bit change of language there. Now, your questions. Debbie?
My only question right now is in section 6, where the Arts Commission will confer with the Service Safety Director and project directors to recommend use of funds. Isn't there already a process in the bylaws of the Arts Commission about approval or acceptance of public art?
There is. I have copies of that. If people on council want that again, I do have that, and yes, it does. So are you saying you think this language is unnecessary?
Well, I just think that recommending the use of funds, if the Arts Commission is going to accept something as public art,
Right.
then it's more than just recommending the use of funds. It's, the policy is a little stronger than the language you have here. If we're accepting it as public art,
Right.
that we're acquiring and would be subject to those policies.
I guess what I was thinking in that language, that what that means to me is recommend how to use it.
Okay.
Like, a sculpture would fit nicely here. A
Okay.
painting would be appropriate on that wall. Or if it's a sewer plant and you don't think anything's appropriate, that's where the just donating to the fund, donating perhaps is a strong word, but putting the money into a fund instead of the actual art,
Okay.
which might be a recommendation as well. So it wasn't a recommendation whether or not to include the art, but a recommendation of how. And I can reword that to make it work a little better. Virginia?
Yep. I have a couple of kind of, I guess, things to say and kind of clarify issues. I mean, are you suggesting that, started by saying we have a lot of local artists, and it could appear that this is just like, giving work to artists. I want to say that, an allocation of money and then local people select local artists to carry out various commissions. So, I don't know, I think that presents some, I think the guidelines would have to be really clear, otherwise it's like having your, paying your friend to do the art. So I just think that's something that needs to be clarified. And the other thing is that, this is basically for aesthetic reasons, which I support. I love art. I tend to feel that there are some basics that were not aesthetic aspects of the city that are more basic than art, which, heaven forbid I'm going to say the word, is cleanliness. If we have graffiti, if we have dirt, if people don't maintain their properties, and then we have some art, I don't think that fulfills kind of the intent or mission of this to make this an aesthetically pleasing town. So I like this. I am concerned, however, on the issue of maybe first things first and have a percent for PW, which is power washing. In other words, maybe
Those are my initials.
if we can dictate some amount for this, maybe there are ways to, take care of some other aesthetics of the community. I'd like to see the chamber step up and say, let's have our business allocate some small amount for power washing. So that we take care of more aspects than just, buying and placing art. So those are the issues that I just want to get on the table.
I will say that with the chamber, I had a bit of that conversation.
Yeah.
Power washing didn't come up, but certainly environmental
Priorities.
issues and some of the other things that they are very conscious of right now. They were talking about that, and that was exactly why they were comfortable with the encouragement rather than the mandated, that they
Right.
want
Well,
to
of
pay
course.
attention
Yeah.
to those other things.
Right, the city is mandated, but private developers are not. And,
Right.
and, it's the uptown business owners that I think also need to kind of step up to the plate. So I like the idea that this is raising the issue of the aesthetics of the community. That's where I'll kind of leave it for now.
Paul?
If I remember, you were talking about performing arts being part of this, or is that
Right.
part of the fund, or?
That is an option.
Okay.
And do you remember where it says that? I know it's in here.
I don't know where it says it, that's why I was
Um,
asking, I couldn't find it.
Six?
6? No?
Yeah, the second bullet.
Oh, public performance, promotion of, okay.
Right. Yeah,
great.
or public exhibition. Yeah, we left that door open. That also would go along with the Arts Commission's mission to include the performing arts as an option.
And you excluded the street and highway construction, so we're not going
Right.
to have it 682,
Right.
something
Could be in the
there.
middle of the turnaround,
Yeah,
or the
see.
roundabout.
Well, there could be art there, just that's an extra expense for the city.
How about choreographed power washing, performing arts?
I almost think it's better for private developers to do it in the city.
Other questions or comments? Yes.
Commercial construction participation, A has a top, not limited to the sum of $200,000.
Let's make it the 100.
Okay,
Take
that
out
section
the-
is 100 as well, then?
Everything's 100.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. You had it in the section 4B, you had one or the other, and then you had only just one. Okay.
Where else was it? Oh, I see.
Yeah,
A.
yeah, section A, yeah, 4A. So you want both to be 100,000? Okay.
Don't want to be greedy.
No, just sort of seeing two numbers, when you would reference 100,000. was the
And I
first one.
also might add that we don't often have projects that are over $1 million. This is not going to be something that a huge amount of money is going into on a regular basis.
No.
You heard the mayor say that there haven't been any capital things in the past year. Things like the community center, it would have kicked in. The community center, in terms of a city building, has more art than any other place in the city. It's got the hanging art, it's got art rails inside, it has the fountain. It would be in compliance. I think that's the only project over $1 million recently, the renovation of the parking garage, but that could be argued that that was just maintenance. And the other thing that I want to point out that I deliberately put in here, partly because we're a small town. Sorry, we're a huge, beautiful town, but we're not as large as the urban areas. And I did include that council can waive this for any project.
Yeah.
So it gives that option at any point.
Okay.
Anything else? Paul?
One more question. You've gotten feedback from the chamber. Have you gotten it from anybody else in terms of Arts Commission? They seem probably would
The
like
Arts
this, but-
Commission, obviously, was instrumental in putting together what all should go into it. I have spoken with tourism as well. Anyone else you want me to talk to?
No, I was just wondering what kind of feedback it's been.
Right.
You've had it out for
No,
about
the feedback's
almost a
been
month.
good.
Okay.
As I said, the requirement for the private was a bit of a stumbling block, but they were very positive about the idea of the encourage language. And I did find, it was in the copy that I gave you of another ordinance. It had encourage private, and Debbie pointed that out that night. And just the more I talked to people, the more I felt that that was a way to go with the private to educate. And I think there's some good sense there. I would like to see this to establish that we have a policy of having art in our public places.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Any?
So,
Nancy?
Carol, I asked you the other day, and I think I meant to review this. So we're really only talking last year about as many as maybe 3 for the last couple of years, 3 structures that we would be encouraging?
The private, yeah, it was, I've got that here with me, I'm not going to dig for it, it would take me
No,
2
I can't-
minutes.
I
It
don't
was
have it.
about 5 developers. A couple of them had multiple projects. Steve may remember from what was put together. It really was like maybe 4 developers would have been impacted by being over the $1 million. And of course, University Estates was multiple projects, but it says in here, you only pay once if you've got a
Right.
bunch of projects going on.
Okay, so it's really applying to a relatively small number when we get down
Right.
to it. Okay.
And to my way of thinking, a major part of this is to provide the guidance so that both the public and the private projects know what that means to have fine art included in a project and how to go about doing that. I have not put things in here like there are some cities that it's directly tied in with the Ohio Arts Council. Ohio University's percent for art is totally dealt with by the Ohio Arts Commission. They name the artist, they, tell them, what artist is going to work with them and so on and so forth. It didn't go there. I felt this was much more appropriate to our situation at this time. Paul,
Thanks for doing this work.
thanks.
Looks good.
I think, I have no miscellaneous. So, We're out of here.
So,